You slept last night, maybe 6 hours, maybe 8, maybe even more than you normally get, and you woke up tired. Not groggy, not the kind of tired that a second cup of coffee fixes, not the kind that fades by mid-morning, just tired. Heavy in a way that doesn't match what your body actually did. Heavy in a way that doesn't have a clear explanation when you look at your day and try to find the cause. And the worst part isn't even the tiredness itself. It's the confusion that comes with it. The quiet, slightly unsettling sense that something is off, that your body is failing some basic function, that you should be rested by now and you simply aren't. Here's what I want to tell you before anything else. Before we go anywhere, before we get into the why and the how and what this actually means. The sleep isn't broken. You aren't broken. What's happening to you has a very specific, very understandable explanation, and understanding it changes the whole picture. Not because understanding fixes everything, but because right now you're fighting something you can't see clearly. And I'm going to show it to you right now, not at the end, not after 20 minutes of build-up, because you deserve to have the clearest part of this first. The tiredness that sleep doesn't fix is almost never about the body. It's about the mind. And more specifically, it's about what the mind is doing during the hours you think you're supposed to be resting. Your brain does not automatically turn off when you close your eyes. That's the thing most people don't fully understand about sleep and exhaustion. You go horizontal, the lights go off, the room gets quiet, and your conscious mind steps back. Yes, but the rest of the mind, the part that has been running the worry and the planning and the replaying and the scanning all day, that part doesn't just stop because your body decided to rest. It keeps going, not in the same way, not with the same clarity, but with the same underlying energy, the same emotional charge, the same unresolved weight. And here's the part that explains so much. The quality of your sleep is not determined only by the hours you sleep. It's determined by what your nervous system is doing while you sleep. A nervous system that has been in a state of low-level tension all day doesn't just release that tension at bedtime. It carries it in. And that tension changes everything about how your body actually uses the sleep. The deep restorative stages, the ones where your brain processes the day and your body actually repairs itself, are dramatically shortened when your system is still running on alert. So you sleep, technically, the hours pass, but the rest that was supposed to happen inside those hours, the real, physical, cellular rest, didn't fully come, because your mind never gave your body permission to completely let go. That's the exhaustion, not sleep deprivation, mental load that doesn't know how to clock out. Now I want to trace how this started, because understanding the origin doesn't just satisfy curiosity, it dissolves a particular kind of shame that a lot of people carry around this. The shame of feeling tired all the time with no obvious reason. The shame of looking at your life from the outside and thinking it shouldn't be this hard, it shouldn't be this heavy. Other people are doing more with less and still functioning. Why can't I? That shame, quietly, makes everything worse. Because shame is its own form of mental load. So let's get rid of it right here by replacing it with something accurate. At some point, your mind learned to work overtime. Not because something is wrong with it, because something was asked of it. Maybe life got genuinely hard for a while. Maybe there was a period of real uncertainty, real stress, real instability where staying alert and thinking ahead was actually the right response. Your brain rose to that. It adapted. It took on the extra load because the extra load was real. It kept the plates spinning because the plates needed spinning. And then, slowly, the acute crisis passed. The hard season moved towards something more manageable. The thing you were bracing for either happened or didn't, and life continued. But your mind didn't get that memo. Nobody sent the internal update that said, the emergency is over, you can stand down now. So it kept going, kept watching, kept carrying the same level of alertness into circumstances that no longer required it. and the mental weight that was once proportional to the situation became disproportionate, because the situation changed and the mental patterns didn't. That's not a character flaw. That's not weakness. That's a learning system that did its job too well and doesn't have a built-in way to unlearn it without something deliberately interrupting the pattern. You didn't choose to keep carrying it. You just never had a clear moment where you put it down, and the body keeps the score of all of it. That phrase exists because it's true in a way that is almost uncomfortably literal. Everything your mind holds on to, your body holds on to too. The unprocessed stress from last month, the conversation from last week that still sits wrong, the low-grade worry about 3 different things you're keeping in the back of your mind so you don't forget about them. Your body is carrying all of it, not metaphorically, physically, in the tension of your jaw that you didn't know was tight until you noticed it just now, in the shallow breathing that has become your default without you deciding it, in the shoulders that don't fully drop even when you're sitting in a chair that's perfectly comfortable. Your body has been in a very gentle, very consistent state of preparation for something that isn't actually arriving. And that state of preparation is expensive. It costs energy that should be going to restoration. It costs the deep relaxation that your cells actually need to repair and reset. It costs the quality of sleep that hours alone cannot give you. So when you wake up tired after a full night, your body isn't failing you. It's showing you exactly what it's been asked to carry. It's being completely honest. The tiredness is accurate information. It's just not information about your sleep. It's information about your mental load. And those are 2 completely different problems, requiring 2 completely different responses. Here's the first real thing that helps, and I'm giving it to you now because it reframes everything that comes after it. Stop trying to solve the tiredness with more sleep. Not because sleep doesn't matter, it does, and we're going to talk about it, but because if the root cause is mental load and nervous system tension, then simply adding more hours doesn't fix it. You can sleep 10 hours and wake up exhausted if those 10 hours were spent with a system that was still partially on guard. You can lie in bed perfectly still for 8 hours and spend those hours in a shallow, restless, low-grade state of alertness that looks like sleep from the outside, but functions more like an extended worry session with your eyes closed. The goal isn't more hours. The goal is different hours, hours where your nervous system actually disengages, where the background process running the worry and the planning and the vigilance actually slows down enough to let the deep rest in. And the way you create that is not by trying to force relaxation at bedtime, because forcing is itself a form of tension, and tension is exactly what you're trying to release. The way you create it is by gradually, throughout the day, reducing the mental load before it gets to bedtime, because the night is downstream of the day. The quality of your sleep is almost entirely determined by what your nervous system went through in the 16 hours before you closed your eyes. And if those 16 hours were full of unprocessed tension, unresolved rumination, and the constant low buzz of ambient worry, then the night inherits all of it. You cannot outrun the day at bedtime. You have to change the day. Let's talk about what mental load actually looks like during a normal day, because I think most people underestimate how much they're actually carrying at any given moment. It's not just the obvious things. It's not just the big stresses or the clear anxieties that you'd point to if someone asked what's wrong. It's the smaller things, the constant things, the things so habitual that they've become invisible. It's the low-level monitoring of everyone around you. Are they okay? Are they upset? Did I say something wrong? Are things good between us? It's the background planning that never stops. What needs to happen today? What might I be forgetting? What's coming up this week that I haven't fully prepared for? It's the ambient self-evaluation that runs underneath everything. Did I handle that well? Am I doing enough? Am I falling behind somewhere? What do people think of me? It's the unfinished thoughts you keep open like browser tabs, running in the background, using processing power you don't know you're spending. All of that has weight. All of that requires energy. And all of that lands in your body at the end of the day as a form of tension that your muscles, your nervous system, and your sleeping brain are then asked to process overnight. And when the load is too heavy, when you've carried too many open tabs, too much ambient monitoring, too much unresolved background noise, the night can't fully process it. So you wake up with the residue of yesterday still sitting in your system, and then the new day adds more, and the residue compounds and the tiredness deepens. This is what people mean when they describe feeling tired for no reason. The reason is there. It's just invisible because it was carried in small installments rather than one obvious dramatic event. Now here is something that I think lands differently once you understand the bigger picture. The tiredness you feel, that deep, specific, sleep-resistant tiredness, is your body's way of telling you that the relationship between your mind and the concept of rest has been broken for a while. Not the sleep itself, not even the hours of it, but the fundamental belief underneath it all, that you are allowed to stop, that you are allowed to not be productive, not be vigilant, not be preparing or solving or managing, that you are allowed to simply exist for a moment without it costing you something. Because here's what a lot of people discover when they really look at their relationship with rest. They don't actually believe they're allowed to have it. Not fully, not guiltlessly. They lie down and they feel the pull to be doing something. They sit quietly and they feel vaguely irresponsible. They have a slow morning and the voice in their head catalogues all the things that aren't getting done. And so even the rest they do take is half rest, compromised rest, rest with one eye open, one ear on the door, one part of the brain still running the checklist. That kind of rest doesn't restore. It can't, because restoration requires complete permission. It requires the nervous system to receive the message at every level that it is genuinely safe to let go. And if you're simultaneously resting and monitoring whether you should be resting, the system never gets that message. The vigilance stays, the tiredness stays, the hours pass and the exhaustion remains. So this is one of the most important questions you can ask yourself, and I want you to actually sit with it. Do you believe you are allowed to rest? Not whether you think rest is important in theory, you probably do. But in your body, in your gut, in the quiet, honest place underneath all the things you tell yourself you should do you actually believe that stopping is okay? That being tired is not a character flaw? That needing rest is not weakness? That you do not have to earn the right to feel restored? For a lot of people, the answer is complicated. And the complication is the problem. There's a particular version of this that I want to name specifically because I see it everywhere and almost nobody talks about it in plain language. A lot of people who struggle with this kind of exhaustion are also people who are very good at functioning, externally good at it. They go to work, they meet their responsibilities, they show up for the people who need them, they keep moving. From the outside, they look like they're handling things, and from the inside, they are handling things. But the cost of handling things without ever fully stopping is exactly this: the tiredness that builds in layers, the sleep that doesn't restore, the growing sense that you are running on something that is not quite energy, not quite motivation, but more like momentum, like a machine that would require enormous effort to stop, so it just keeps going, getting heavier as it goes. People in this pattern often don't ask for help for a long time because nothing is specifically, dramatically wrong. There's no crisis you can point to. Just this slow, steady heaviness that you keep pushing through because stopping doesn't feel available and because you've been doing it for long enough that you've stopped questioning whether it has to be this way. But it doesn't have to be this way. That's not a motivational statement. It's a literal fact about how nervous systems work. The state you're in right now is not your set point. It's a learned state. It became the default through repetition and circumstance, but it is not permanent. It is not the truth about who you are or what your life has to feel like. It is a pattern, and patterns change when you change what's feeding them. Let's talk about what actually feeds the exhaustion, because this is where it gets specific and where specific is useful. The biggest feeder is rumination. Not worry about the future, though that contributes, but specifically the replaying of things that already happened, the conversation you keep returning to, the decision you keep second-guessing, the moment you handled badly or that was handled badly toward you, that your mind keeps loading back up and running through again as if there's something different to find in it this time. Rumination is one of the most energy-expensive mental activities there is. And it's particularly expensive because it's so repetitive and so unresolved. You're not gaining new information each time you replay the memory. You're not reaching a new conclusion. You're running the same emotional experience over and over, spending emotional energy without receiving anything in return. It's like leaving a heater running in an empty room. The energy goes out, nothing useful happens, and you're left with less than you started with. And rumination doesn't stop at bedtime. It continues into sleep. The emotional charge of an unprocessed memory or a lingering guilt or a resentment you haven't found a way to put down. That charge runs through the night in a different form. It shows up in the texture of your sleep, in the dreams you half remember, in the way you wake up feeling like you've been working even though your body didn't move. Processing the things your mind is holding on to, not obsessively, not by going deeper into the rumination, but by acknowledging them, naming them, and making a deliberate choice about what to do with them. That is one of the most direct ways to change the quality of your rest, not through sleep tricks or bedtime routines, though those can help, but through the much harder, much more fundamental work of reducing what you're asking your mind to carry unresolved into the night. The second big feeder is something I want to spend a real moment on, because it gets overlooked almost completely when people talk about tiredness and rest. It's emotional suppression. The ongoing, daily practice of feeling something and not fully feeling it, of registering a difficult emotion, frustration, sadness, loneliness, fear, grief, anger, and immediately doing something with it instead of just letting it be what it is, filing it away, getting practical about it, pushing past it because there are things to do and this is not the moment. Telling yourself that you're fine, or that worse things happen to others, or that there's no point in going there right now. This is so normalized that most people don't recognize it as suppression. They think they're being resilient. They think they're coping, and sometimes they are. Sometimes moving forward is genuinely the right thing to do. But when it happens as a constant pattern, when emotions are routinely pushed below the surface without ever being given the space to move through, they don't disappear. They accumulate, they get stored, and the storing is expensive. It takes ongoing energy to keep things below the surface. It takes a kind of constant internal pressure that your body holds as tension and your nervous system reads as load. Emotions are supposed to be temporary. The word itself tells you they are meant to move, to come up, to be felt, to pass through. When they're allowed to do that, even imperfectly, even uncomfortably, even just by acknowledging, this is hard right now and I feel it, they lose their charge. When they're not allowed to do that, they stay. And staying emotions are stored tension. And stored tension is part of what's making you tired. This doesn't mean you have to have a breakdown every time something difficult happens. It means learning gradually to give yourself a few moments of genuine honesty about what you're actually feeling before you move past it. It means stopping briefly and being with the emotion instead of immediately managing it. It means treating your own inner experience with the same attention you'd give a friend who came to you struggling. That small practice, over time, reduces the emotional storage. And reducing the emotional storage reduces the load. And reducing the load changes the sleep And changing the sleep changes the waking up. Everything is connected. I want to shift now to something very concrete, because I've been talking about causes, and I want to talk about daily practice. Not a program, not a system with steps and rules, but a different way of moving through the ordinary parts of your day that gradually changes what you bring to the night. The first thing is what I'd call micro-releases, small moments spread through the day, where you consciously and deliberately put something down, not permanently. You can pick it back up. You're not abandoning your responsibilities just for a moment, a minute, maybe two, where you stop, breathe, and choose not to run the mental checklist for 60 seconds, where you close the tabs, not forever, just temporarily, where you give your nervous system a moment of genuinely not holding everything. This sounds almost insultingly simple against the weight of what you're carrying. I know, but the nervous system doesn't need grand gestures. It needs consistent small signals that safety is available, that rest is allowed, that not holding everything for a minute won't make everything collapse. And it needs those signals throughout the day, not just at bedtime, because by bedtime the load has already accumulated and it takes much longer to bring it down. 10 micro-releases through the day, 10 genuine moments of putting the weight down, even for a minute, change the chemistry of what you bring to sleep more than any supplement or sleep routine, because they're addressing the source instead of the symptom. The second thing is completion. One of the most insidious ways mental load grows is through incompletion. Things started and not finished, decisions half made, situations unresolved that your brain keeps an open file on. Your mind is a very literal tracking system. If something is unresolved, it stays active. It keeps pinging you. It stays in the queue because your brain genuinely doesn't know whether it still needs to pay attention to it. The practice of deliberately closing things, of making small decisions you've been deferring, of finishing the quick task instead of putting it back on the mental pile, of having the brief, hard conversation you've been avoiding, of simply deciding, I'm not going to resolve this today and that is okay. That practice actively reduces the number of open files your brain is running. And fewer open files means less background processing. And less background processing means deeper rest. It's not about getting everything done. It's about actively choosing what stays open and what closes, instead of letting everything accumulate by default. There's also something specific to the relationship between your evening and your night that I don't want to skip, because the transition matters more than most people realize. Most people don't have a transition. They go from full activity, screens, noise, stimulation, input, doing, to bed, sometimes in the space of minutes. And they wonder why they can't fall asleep, or why they sleep lightly, or why the mind is still running after the lights go off. But you can't go from 60 to 0 without the system running hot for a while. There's no gradual deceleration. And without deceleration, the nervous system arrives at sleep still partially engaged. The transition doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't require a whole ritual or a structured wind-down program. It just requires some amount of time, even 30 minutes, where the input slows down before the lights go off, where screens step back, where stimulation reduces, where the mind has some space to begin the process of settling, where you stop feeding it new information to process and give it some room to process what it's already holding. During this time, the most useful thing is not distraction, not more content, more noise, more input to keep the mind occupied. What's useful is something that allows the mind to wander and land without urgency. Something slow and sensory and low stakes. Something that gives the nervous system the signal that the day is actually ending, that the watch is over, that it can begin to let go. What that looks like is different for everyone. The content matters less than the quality. Less input, lower stakes, slower pace, no demand for output. That's the signal. And over time, if you give it consistently, your system begins to associate that signal with permission to rest. And rest becomes easier. and the sleep that follows becomes more restorative. Not because you did more, but because you gave the system what it actually needed to complete the transition. I want to come back to something I mentioned earlier, because I think it deserves its own space. The belief that you're not allowed to rest, that you haven't earned it. That stopping is irresponsible or indulgent, or for people whose lives are less demanding than yours. This belief is everywhere, and it's doing enormous damage. Not just to people's sleep, but to their relationship with themselves. Because when rest is a reward rather than a right, when recovery is conditional rather than fundamental, you are always slightly in debt to your own well-being. You are always one more completed task away from permission to stop, and the tasks never end. The list never empties. The moment of sufficient completion never arrives, so the rest never fully comes, and the tiredness compounds, and somewhere inside you, a quiet, persistent exhaustion sets in that isn't just physical. It's the exhaustion of never quite feeling like enough to justify your own care. Your body doesn't need you to earn rest. It needs rest the way it needs water. Unconditionally, regularly, not as a prize, but as a basic requirement of being a living thing. The mind needs the same, not as a reward for a productive week, not as something you allow yourself once things are under control, because things are never fully under control, and waiting for that moment means waiting forever. Rest is not the absence of responsibility. Rest is what makes responsible, caring, functional life sustainable. It is the foundation, not the reward. And treating it as anything less than that is not discipline. It is slow damage, accumulated quietly over time, showing up exactly as the exhaustion you feel right now that the sleep cannot touch. There's a version of this I want to speak to directly, because I think there are people who've been carrying this specific weight for a very long time, and they need to hear this said plainly. If you have been exhausted, not occasionally, not in bursts, but consistently as a background condition of your daily life, for months or years, this is not your normal. I want to be very clear about that. The fact that you've adapted to it, the fact that you found ways to keep functioning inside it, the fact that it no longer surprises you, none of that makes it normal. It makes it familiar, and familiar is not the same as inevitable. Chronic mental exhaustion of this kind is not something you simply live with. It is something that changes when the underlying patterns change. And the underlying patterns, the rumination, the suppression, the vigilance, the belief that you're not allowed to stop, the open files, the missing transitions, the mental load that never gets set down, all of those are changeable. Not overnight, not through one decision or one practice or one video, but genuinely, fundamentally changeable over time with consistent, patient attention to the right things. You have probably tried things before: supplements, sleep hygiene advice, earlier bedtimes, different routines, and maybe some of them helped a little. But if the mental load was still there, if the underlying patterns were still running, the help was surface level. A better mattress doesn't reduce rumination. A sleep mask doesn't process suppressed emotion. A melatonin supplement doesn't teach your nervous system that rest is safe. What reaches those deeper things is the slow, honest work of understanding what your mind is actually carrying and beginning to carry it differently. That's not dramatic work. It's quiet work. It happens in small moments throughout ordinary days. It happens every time you choose the micro-release over the added load, every time you close a mental file instead of leaving it open, every time you give yourself permission, just for a minute, to not be the person managing everything. So here is where we come to close, and I want to make sure this lands in the right place. The tiredness you feel is real. It is not in your head in the dismissive sense. It is absolutely real. It is physically real. It affects your whole life. But it is in your head in the literal sense. It lives in the patterns your mind has been running, the load it has been carrying, the permission it has not been giving your body to fully let go. And that means the solution is also in your head, which is actually good news, even though it might not feel that way immediately. Because it means the thing that changes this is not outside you. It's not waiting for your circumstances to improve, or your to-do list to empty, or your life to get less complicated. It's available to you now, in the quality of attention you bring to your own inner state, in the small choices you make throughout the day about what you carry and what you set down, in the story you hold about whether rest is earned or whether it's just yours. Your mind has been explaining the exhaustion to you for a long time, in the language of tension and shallow sleep and morning heaviness and afternoons that feel like wading through something thick. It's been trying to tell you something. Not that you're broken, not that something is permanently wrong, but that the way you've been relating to your own mind and your own need for rest has been out of alignment with what you actually need for a very long time. This is the explanation. This is the thing your body has been trying to tell you through the tiredness, not a diagnosis, not a verdict. Just an honest, patient message from a system that has been working too hard for too long, waiting for the moment you would stop, listen, and finally give it what it was asking for. Not more hours, just real rest, just permission, just you finally deciding that your exhaustion matters enough to do something about it at the level where it actually lives. That level is here, and the work starts, not when you sleep tonight, but in the way you move through the rest of today. Small, consistent, patient, real. That's how the tiredness that sleep couldn't touch finally begins to lift.